So my name's Christina Raia. I am a crowdfunding specialist at Seed&Spark. So I'm a filmmaker. That's what I do, and Seed&Spark became a job because of my own crowdfunding experience. So I crowdfunded twice on Kickstarter successfully, and then moved over to Seed&Spark after I met the CEO and kind of fell in love with the ideology of crowdfunding being more about building an audience and less about the money, and that's sort of how the company approaches crowdfunding. And so then I crowdfunded twice on Seed&Spark, most recently this February. So I'm just sort of recovering from all the work of all of that. So yeah, I started working at Seed&Spark because I started speaking on panels about my crowdfunding experience and the success I had had, and got offered a job, and now I teach this class and help people launch campaigns. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what makes Seed&Spark different, but you should know that we are the only platform that offers personalized feedback for every single campaign that gets submitted, and there's always someone who's kind of looking at your pitch video and your materials and giving you best practices to approach your specific campaign, and they're watching your progress along the way, and that's basically my job, is to help you potentially launch a campaign. And I should also say that though this is a Seed&Spark class, and I do hope that you would come out of it wanting to use our platform, everything I'm about to say applies to crowdfunding in general and can be used on any platform of your choosing, and also though is film specific, the principles are not film specific, so you can use them in any kind of artistic, audience-focused crowdfunding campaign. So, and then before I really get into this information, I should say that for anyone who didn't, if you give me your email, I will send this presentation to you after class, because it's a lot of information and I want you to actually be thinking and engaging rather than taking a ton of notes. And let me just, could you pass this back? Thanks. And really this class is based on two assumptions. So one, that you would like an independent, sustainable career making moving images of some kind, however you define movies, film. And two, that crowdfunding is really, 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 really hard. Like really, really hard. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying to you. So if you are approaching it as just a means to make money for one project, you're kind of missing the point, because all of that work is just not worth it for that. What it can be is the opportunity for you to have that sustainable, independent career that you want. So a little bit about Seed&Spark. As I said, we are the only platform that offers personalized one-on-one feedback. This stat is actually incorrect. It has gone up to 82% as of this month. We have the highest success rate in the industry compared to 37% of our biggest competitor. And we are film focused. So it's a little bit broad. You can crowdfund film festivals or film magazines or blogs related to film. It has to be film movie centric in some way, but it isn't just films that you crowdfund. And really, while other platforms are essentially trying to help you raise money for a project, what we're trying to do is help you build a career, help you actually have a sustainable career and approach crowdfunding as that. So we're trying to really fix what we think is broken in independent film, and that's largely that there's so many middlemen between the creators and the rights and the profit that we want to put the power back in the hands of the artist. So we're not only a crowdfunding platform, we're also actually a distribution platform. So you have the option to come full circle. It's not mandatory, but you can come full circle on our platform and crowdfund through an audience and then distribute to that audience through our streaming platform. And I'll talk more about that later, but those are kind of the key things that make us different. Actually, there's one more big thing that makes us different. We kind of operate as like a wedding registry, rather than just saying, okay, here's the number that I need for making my movie, and there's no real transparency in that with your audience. We force you to really put your budget out into the world so people understand where their money is going, and it pushes you to hopefully be realistic and responsible and really accountable for how you spend every dime. And then it allows kind of one of two things, or two things that people can do. They can either give directly to an item, so like let's say your actors friends want to contribute to your campaign and they want to contribute specifically to the pay for the cast, they can choose to do that and it feels much more personal to them. Or people can loan items that meet the overall value within your goals. So I do this all the time. I loan my equipment to my friends towards their campaign. I have a lighting kit. I give it out all the time to my friends. Locations, food, people can donate food. They can, some people will work out deals with their crew and cast where it's like, we'll pay you X amount, but would you be willing to loan your services if, we come a little short? So it kind of gives you that flexibility while still having that accountability and making sure that you can deliver on what you're promising. And I can pull up the site later to sort of show you that. And then something else that we offer other than the kind of education and personalization, we have a really impressive dashboard. I'll also pull up my own dashboard later that shows you exactly where your traffic is coming from and helps you kind of market your campaign along the way and figure out where your audience is and keep in touch with them. And we also offer something called our Filmmaker gift box, which has over $9,000 worth of goods and services through partners that we've acquired, like a G-Tech hard drive and tons of festival waivers and post-production services. And in order to get the Filmmaker gift box, you have to run a successful campaign on our platform and get 500 followers. So there's two things that people can do. They can contribute directly, give money, or they can just follow if they don't have the money right now, or if they're not sure if they want to contribute, but they definitely want to get your updates, they can follow the campaign. And we really try to incentivize filmmakers to get followers because it's not about the money, it's about the crowd. It's not about the funding, it's about the crowd in the word crowdfunding because you need an audience. And so the more people that are following along, the more likely you'll have people who are willing to rent the film and spread the word when it's actually done. So 500 followers, free to follow, you get the Filmmaker gift box, and you also become eligible for distribution on our platform. So, 12,000 films are submitted to Sundance every year, and 120 of them get in. That includes features. So, there's nothing wrong with aspiring to that, but realistically, that's not something that you can bank on, nor is that something in your control. What you can do is take control and create a direct connection to your audience, because that's the only true proven path to success that we've seen in the past 5 to 10 years in terms of independent film. It's finding your audience, engaging them, taking them with you along on the road towards making your film, and turning them into amplifiers for you and your career, not just the specific project you're working on. So, hope to be the 1%, but prepare to be the 99.9, the 0.1%. And just take control of your own career, because that's what not only crowdfunding, but social media in general and the internet has allowed now. And that's how I've been able to crowdfund successfully 4 times and build an audience in between each campaign. So I already said this. Okay, so before you start a campaign, you want to think of your film as starting a business. So it's not just what do I need to make it right now, what do I need to get it made, but what do I actually want to do with it? What's the end game? Do you want to have a theatrical screening? Do you want to do self-distribution? Do you want to get a distribution deal? What do those deliverables look like? You need to know the cost of everything. And not just, the product itself, but festival submissions and traveling to festivals and marketing and all of that. Know how much it's going to cost you, because otherwise you're just going along on this ride and realizing you don't have enough money along the way. That's what you really need to do before you even think about crowdfunding. And then you want to think about who your audience is, because this is where it all starts. You need the crowd in order to crowdfund. So you want to really figure out not only who your audience is, but how you're going to reach them. And that's really what this class is more about, not necessarily figuring out who your audience is, but how to engage them and create a relationship with them. But the most important thing that you should take away from this class is that you should collect email addresses. I just collected all of yours. I will be sending you this deck after, but I also, now have your email addresses. So if you are doing a Q&A at a film festival, I'm going to talk about this later, but film festivals are not what they used to be. They're not necessarily for distribution. They're not a way to break into the industry. What they are is a direct connection to people who pay to watch movies, who are interested in independent film, who are interested in supporting movies and filmmakers. And so you want to create as many opportunities as possible to have a direct connection to people. And the most, other than a one-on-one in-person conversation, the most direct connection you can have is something that goes directly to their inbox, that you know that they will receive and hopefully open, and that you can personalize and tailor to them. So, social media is great. It's an excellent tool. A lot of people think that that's all you need in crowdfunding, that you just share something over and over on social media and people just discover it and decide to give. But that's really not how it works. We've only seen a 1% conversion rate from social media shares to crowdfunding contributions. I personally have over 3,000 Twitter followers. I'm lucky if even 1% engages with what I tweet, let alone clicks through to links to contribute and watch and share. So what social media should be is a way to bring people in. We've seen a 20 to 30% conversion rate from email, direct email outreach to contributions to crowdfunding campaigns. So that's a really big difference, 1% to about 30%. So we want to be using social media as a way to create relationships with people and find people who want to hear what you have to say and want to watch what you want to make, and then bring them inward and get that email address and then create an authentic relationship with them, so that when you reach out for a crowdfunding campaign, you're not just sort of shouting out into the ether, but you're actually directly sort of poking someone and saying, here's why you personally should care about this project. So yeah, basically what you're trying to do, this 20 to 30%, that's your audience, the people that are contributing and showing up to screenings and sharing. You just want to keep making that circle bigger and bigger by using social media to grow that email list. So who is your audience? If you quote a demographic, we won't kill you, but you would be doing a real disservice to yourself, because these women are all between 24 and 35, but they have different careers, they have different social circles, they have different hobbies, they wake up in the morning and they eat different things for breakfast, they have different lives, and they probably watch very, very different content. And so, if you have millions of dollars, like most Hollywood movies, to just sort of do the military spray and pray method and hope that you hit the people that want to watch your film, great. But then you're not an independent filmmaker. We as independent filmmakers don't have that kind of money, we don't have that kind of time, we don't have those resources. So we have to be very, 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 very specific about how we spend our time and our money and our resources and who we're really engaging with. These questions are designed to help you get specific about the types of people that want to watch your film. And so it's not about, pandering to what people want. It's about saying, okay, here's what I want to make. Who are the people that actually want to see that and be part of it and contribute to it? And where it really starts is pitching your film around to people, like everyone you meet, as many people as possible, and people that can be objective. So like, I wouldn't ask my mom these questions because she'll watch literally anything I make, so her answers would be useless to me. You want someone who's going to be honest with you, and it may be hurtful to hear some friends are just like, yeah, I'm just not into that, but that would be really helpful for you to hear. So you want to ask people. And then when you have a good pool of people who genuinely are interested, then you want to say, okay, so I'm asking people where they hang out on social media, and I'm finding that most of my audience is on Twitter and almost no one's on Facebook. So let me not, spend a lot of time on Facebook during my campaign. Let me really put together a good Twitter-based social media marketing. And that's something you wouldn't know unless you asked people. Where people get their news, it's very important to know if they're the types that click through on social media. If they're not, if you find that they're the types that are going directly to sites that maybe getting press is really important. If they're the types that prefer to have it come to them, to their inbox, then direct email outreach is everything in crowdfunding regardless, but it's good information to have. If you find though that people are very likely to click through, that's their general habit, then you want to make sure that sharing, getting people to share is really important. Or you may find that your audience is not really online at all, and that means you have to get out into the world and start figuring out where they are and talking to them one-on-one. But you wouldn't know that unless you ask these questions. And then also very specifically, like where you get your news, what publications are people reading? So let's say one person says they get their news from the New York Times and another person says BuzzFeed. There's nothing wrong with either of those answers, but you know, they probably like to be spoken to in different ways. They would probably be caught with very different headlines. You know, the person who reads BuzzFeed a lot would maybe really be likely to click on an email where the subject is 5 reasons why you should, you know, contribute to this campaign, whereas, you know, the New York Times reader maybe not so much. So these are the things, like the very, very specific details. My own personal example, my second campaign was for my first feature. It was a horror film, and Seed&Spark didn't exist yet. I did it on Kickstarter, and I didn't really realize how relevant all these questions could be. But what I did do was reach out to a bunch of students in a horror film class that I had been part of and asked them where they got their news about indie horror and horror in general. And through them, I found maybe 40 different websites and blogs that I had never heard of. And I was able to reach out to them through my campaign, during my campaign, not just with like a very general press release, but with a very specific kind of email that was tailored to not only them, but their readers and what it was their readers liked about them and their site in particular. And I was able to get a ton of press during my campaign because I was being so specific. And while I didn't change a single thing about my film, I did change the way I spoke about it to very specific people and specific sites, and it worked really well for me. And so that I wouldn't know without asking these questions. Music, we had one video on Seed&Spark go viral because he knew that his audience was really into hip-hop music, and he got the rights for one particular song, and it made his video go viral on YouTube. That's like something he couldn't have planned on, but he did his homework and kind of hoped for something that made sense with his audience. As I said, where do you spend your free time? Not everyone's online. Sometimes you need to get out and meet people. And then most importantly, and I should also say, like, organizations, blogs, websites, we are filmmakers, so whenever I ask these questions, the answers tend to be very film-focused, the kinds of things that we're involved with, but you want to be asking people that aren't necessarily filmmakers, but the people that rent and watch movies and don't make movies, because they will probably have much more interesting answers that you've never heard of. And then, most importantly, where do you watch what you watch? So she watches content mostly on her laptop and even on her phone. So if most of your audience is telling you that, there's no reason why you should budget to shoot in 4K. But if most of your audience is saying, I still go to the theater, I only want to watch movies in movie theater, then you do need to budget for that, because this audience will not be watching your film on their phone. But it's just like, you wouldn't know that information, and you could potentially be wasting money. People view content very differently these days. And it also helps you put together your distribution plan. Like, what apps are they watching? Are they the types that rent things on iTunes? Are they on Netflix? Are they a subscriber on seedandspark.com, which is a streaming platform? Yeah, you wouldn't know any of this without asking your audience. So once you have all that information, that's when you can really start putting together a strategy for your campaign. And you should know that this starts really in as far in advance as possible. At minimum, I'd say 2 months, but really, you know, I just shot my second feature in March, and I crowdfunded it in February, and I had been asking people questions and building a social media presence for it for over 6 months, maybe 9 months before, and I had been talking about the script for like years, and so there was a hashtag for my feature years before I was even in development for it. So yeah, crowdfunding starts long before your campaign begins. And ultimately what you're trying to figure out is, you know, not only who you're talking to, but what you're saying and what will catch their attention and how they like to be spoken to and how they can become amplifiers for you and your campaign. And then I'd also like to mention partners. We sometimes see people like to partner with organizations or clothing brands or musicians, anything that feels relevant to your audience. It's a very good idea. What you want to make sure is that you are reaching out well in advance, because especially like nonprofits need a lot of notice to kind of clear the wording of certain things and get approval to like put things in their newsletter, stuff like that. So you really want to, well in advance, create these relationships and make sure that you're going after them in a way that isn't just self-serving. So you want to be creating a mutually beneficial relationship. You want to be offering, not asking. What can my film do to amplify your mission and your message? Not how can you help me? And so an example of this, we had a film called The Video Blogs, which is about a woman who is struggling with depression, and she starts recording these video blogs. And the director reached out to a ton of mental health organizations and created a really great partnership with many throughout his campaign and through his distribution, where he would do a screening of the film, and then the organizations would get to speak to the audience afterwards. And it was a really mutually beneficial relationship. But that took months of reaching out and really kind of trying to get them on board and making sure that their messaging aligned. And then similarly, you want to have that same kind of tone when you're reaching out into the world to your audience. The biggest mistake filmmakers make with crowdfunding is pleading online. And I was definitely guilty of this in 2011, my very first campaign, before there were all these think pieces about what you should and shouldn't do in crowdfunding. I started, you plateau in the middle of a campaign. You have this nice rise, and then you just hit a wall and you're not moving. And so my first week of crowdfunding was great. Lots of contributions, and then the excitement and momentum kind of wore off, and then I was just not moving. So I started sharing stuff on Facebook like, don't buy that cup of coffee this morning, give to my campaign instead. Or don't go out for drinks tonight, give to my campaign instead. And it seems like, it's like, oh, you're going to spend money, why not spend it here? But one, it just kind of looks pathetic and desperate and doesn't create this sense of like, yeah, you want to be part of this. It's like, no, I'm desperate, just give me money. And it also shames people for how they like to spend their money, which is not what you want to do. You want to excite them and be like, yeah, buy as many coffees as you want, but also come be part of this thing with me. So once I realized that, I changed my tone, and I had a lot of success by just saying, here's why this matters, and here's why you should want to be a part of it. The word join is the most important word in crowdfunding. Get used to saying it, and also don't say donate. That's a bad habit. You're not asking for a handout. It's very hard to say to someone why they should donate to your film when they can be donating to all these very, very important causes, especially right now. And so don't create that connection. Say, yeah, like donate, but what you're doing is paying for a product and an experience. And that's what it is. They are becoming part of something. They're paying to get to watch the thing that they're creating, and they're paying to get to have an inside exclusive look at the making of it that no one else will have, that no one who hasn't paid for it will have. So that's the kind of tone that you want to set. And then on social media, if you're not on social media, get on social media. As I said before, it's a great tool to reach out into the world and pull people in. But it doesn't it's all about being authentic and, finding your voice and being comfortable with how much you give away. And so a lot of people think that you have to be on social media, like tweeting everything that you're doing or taking photos of your food and stuff like that. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that. I'm vegan. I take a lot of photos of my food and hashtag the shit out of it. But that doesn't have to be you. You should really figure out who you're trying to reach and who you are and where does that overlap in terms of reaching people and making sure that your voice translates to the work that you're making. So for instance, when I got on Twitter years ago, I just wanted to be followed. So I just would share a lot of like how-to articles and like news about film, and eventually it got really boring, so I stopped doing it. And that's really what happens with a lot of people. They get on social media because they're trying to raise money or promote something, but they get bored and they stop doing it because they weren't really engaging. And so I personally am a very opinionated person, very political person, and so I was like, let me just be me on social media. So I started sharing things about like diversity and inclusion in film and political stuff. I do a lot of LGBT work, so I shared a lot of LGBT-related news articles that tied into my work, but was a representative of my voice as a filmmaker and as a creator, and was my brand. And yes, I lost some followers, but I gained a ton of passionate followers who were really invested in what I had to say, and so were then invested in my work. And that's really what it's about, is finding people who want to become a part of what you're trying to make. And honestly, that means that you have to embrace that you're a bit of a brand yourself, that people aren't latching on to every project you make just because, so I did a horror film. That was my first feature. It was a little bit of a feminist horror film, but ultimately a genre film. And then my second feature was a comedy. I had a web series that was a comedy, an LGBT comedy, and like people followed me from project to project, not because the stories or the genres were the same, but because they were following me as a filmmaker and my voice and what I had to say. And that's kind of what I had to embrace as a filmmaker. And I think that's what filmmakers have to embrace nowadays, is that you are the brand and that you have to kind of engage with people. And so, and engagement is really key. It's not just about sharing, 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 sharing. It's about creating authentic conversations. So looking for conversations that are happening and jumping into them and saying, and then kind of waiting. It's all about planting seeds. So you're sort of waiting for that ask. You don't want to jump into a conversation and be like, check out my crowdfunding campaign. No one likes that. What you want to do is show that you're listening to what people are saying, and then show them how what you're doing is helping that situation, or giving them what they want, or being a part of this mission, whatever it may be. But it's all about kind of planting these seeds on social media and engaging with people. And generally there's like a 1-to-9 ratio. So for every one self-promotional post you want to do, you have to do 9 that are not self-promotional, but you should be strategic about it. So you are a film watcher as well as creator, so share stuff that you like, because people that want to relate to you as a filmmaker want to relate to you in your taste as a watcher as well. And you want to be sharing the content of other filmmakers that you like, because if indie film is going to be sustainable, or rather if your independent career is going to be sustainable, then independent filmmaking in general needs to be sustainable. So we should be supporting each other. It's about a culture of plenty. So you really want to look for other filmmakers to connect with online and share their work. And it doesn't have to be like blind sharing. It should be authentic to your genuine taste. So you really are a fan of this other filmmaker, share their work. And other things, as I said, like I do a lot of LGBT work, so of course I share a lot of LGBT-related news articles. That is like hooking people who are also interested in what I'm interested in, and then hopefully maybe they're following through and clicking to my website and my work, so it's sort of like indirectly self-promotional. But that's kind of how you want to be working this system, this social media system, is by building the world that your content exists within. And then also just like, again, on altruism, supporting each other. If you've never supported a crowdfunding campaign, support one right now, like right now. Before you launch one, not just because it would be silly not to, but because it's like, you know, I don't believe in asking anyone to do something that you wouldn't do yourself, but it's a bad look. You know, when people tweet at me asking me to contribute to their campaign, it's one of the first things I look at, is to see if they have and how many they've contributed to themselves. So yeah, that's pretty huge. And honestly, I've had, on Seed&Spark in my last campaign, you know, there were people that I was crowdfunding with at the same time. We had very different audiences, but we were sharing each other's campaigns, and it didn't take away contributions from my own campaign or their campaigns, because our audiences were different. What it did do was show our audiences that we were doing exactly what we were asking others to do, and it made them want to support the campaigns that we were all sharing, because they wanted to be part of this system of support even more. And so honestly, I've never seen it take away anyone's contribution. There is no one's like, oh, I have $10 to give and I'm only going to give it to you. It's more like, okay, I have $10 to give, I've chosen to give it to you, but then maybe I'll also give you $10 because they're supporting you and they think you're cool and I think they're cool. So that's how I feel about that. Okay, momentum is huge in crowdfunding. I don't like to crap on other platforms, but I will say that I'm very, very, very against flexible funding, because I think that there's no accountability in it, and there's no way to build trust with your audience if they know that you will keep their money even if you make 5% of your goal. I have been burned before. I've given to campaigns on flexible funding platforms. They make 10%. They never make the film, but they kept my $25, and that's that. I don't know what they did with it. It's pretty common on flexible funding campaigns. About 90% of them don't actually get made in film anyway. So even if you don't choose Seed&Spark, I don't recommend a flexible funding platform. The point is that you want people to feel confident that what they're paying for will get made. And we've seen that 90% of campaigns that succeed reach 30% of their goal within the first 3 days. So the reason why 30% seems to be like the sweet spot where strangers feel comfortable contributing, because they feel like, oh, I'm on a successful ride. I'm going to jump on this bandwagon because this looks like it's going to succeed. But when that doesn't exist, when there isn't that safety net, knowing that they'll only get charged if you reach your goal, or in our case, 80%, I'll talk about that in a second, they're less likely to give in those first 3 days. They're gonna wait. Like when I get asked to contribute to a flexible funding campaign, I wait until they reach at least like 60%, which could be 3 weeks into their campaign. And so that's 3 weeks of strangers going to a campaign and seeing that no one has really contributed because everyone is waiting for that percentage that feels safe. And so because you want, you know, people to jump in and get you to 30% as soon as possible, we really recommend that you, A, don't choose flexible funding, but also B, reach out to people ahead of time and secure contributions to get to 30%, like literally the day you go live. Yeah.
One of the things I did, I think it was a good idea, but I mean, I knew that my family was all going to contribute a lot of money. So before I announced it to my email list, my general one, I made that the official launch date, but I asked all my family members to give first, so that when other people came in, there was already, oh, she's already got $2,500.
Exactly. Yeah. Totally.
I thought that was a good strategy.
Absolutely. Like a stranger or even just an acquaintance doesn't want to be the first one to contribute. They need to see that someone else has to get them to want to do it. And so we do recommend like soft launches, or at least, you know, saying on our platform, because you have to get approval to go live, I always say, you know, set your launch date for a week from now at whatever time. Email your core supporters, ask them how much they're going to give, because you know they're going to give, and ask them to give the moment you go live, so that by the time you go wide with it, yeah, you're at 10, 20, 30%. And that's really the best thing that you can do, because momentum is just huge. And so what makes our platform a little bit different is that we're actually an 80% to get greenlit platform. You have to get to 80% of your goal to get your money, because we believe that any truly resourceful filmmaker can make the film that they've promised on 80%, but anything less than that, and they're really sacrificing something that they've promised to their audience. So I like it because it allows me to build contingency funds into my goal without having to really risk losing something I'm promising. Other people choose to be a little bit ambitious and say like, oh, here's my location, here's my ambitious location if we get to 100%, but here's my backup location if we only get to 80, but I'm not, my audience isn't sacrificing anything. I'm not sacrificing quality or anything that my audience is paying for, because that's really the biggest thing. Maybe some people can make their film on 25% of their goal, but so then they've either lied about what their goal, like what they really need, they've just overestimated it just because, or they've sacrificed a bunch of stuff that won't meet the quality that you initially invested in. And so that's why flexible is just not where it's at, and momentum is everything. You really want to make sure that you're as close as possible before you hit that second week lull, because you will. And then I'm going to talk a little bit later about how to kind of keep the momentum going, but a quick run through of what you should know now, who your audience is, where to reach them, how to talk to them, and how they want to watch your stuff. So the big question, how much? Like, there's this magic number. There is not. What you should do is, as I said earlier, put together a budget of the entire life cycle of your film, the end game of it, figure out what that number is, and then see if it's attainable. It may not be attainable based on your social media following and your email list. It ultimately really comes down to your email list. You should know that statistically speaking, only 30% of a team's full network will contribute. That's very disappointing. That means 70% of people you know that you reach out to will not. But that will hopefully help you be realistic about the goal that you set. And so something that's different about our platform, you can raise money in stages. So if you find that, you need $60,000, but your email list is just not big enough for that, even combined with however big your team is, what you can do is break that up into stages and say, okay, I need $5,000 to get through pre-production. I need $15,000 to get through production. You can break it up, and you run a campaign per stage, and you change your wish list and your goal each time. And what's great about it is that you come back to the same campaign page and you keep your followers. So hopefully, if you ran a campaign 6 months ago for production and now you're coming back for post, hopefully you've increased your followers on that campaign page in those 6 months. So now you have a new pool of people who have been following but have never contributed. And that's really what's great about our platform in terms of stages, and what allows you to keep it manageable. Because, if you're running your first campaign, we don't believe that you should be friend and family funding. That's kind of the bad habit of crowdfunding. Ideally, you would have an audience that you're reaching out to and a bigger audience each time, but you need to start somewhere. And so your first campaign probably will be friend and family funding, but you want to make sure that you can build upon them with each one. So incentives, we're against kind of the like swag type incentives that a lot of platforms endorse. You know, I don't know about you, but like I don't put posters on my wall unless they're my own film posters. And so things like hats and t-shirts and posters and mugs, it's like, why are you spending money on things that people don't really care about? If you poll your audience through those questions and find that, yeah, they do really love like fan t-shirts, then yeah, budget for that. But that's, the biggest mistake in crowdfunding is that filmmakers, other than just like, the biggest mistake other than just putting it online and hoping people find it, the second biggest mistake is not budgeting for delivery of incentives and then not actually delivering on those incentives and then ruining your accountability the next time you try and launch another campaign. Because I made this mistake with my first campaign. I offered t-shirts, but like didn't actually have enough money to make and deliver those t-shirts. So it took me forever to get those t-shirts to people, but I didn't launch another campaign until I did that, because otherwise, my word means nothing. So don't make that mistake. If you choose to do it, budget for it. But we believe that you should not be spending more money. You shouldn't be increasing your goal just because. All of your money should be going towards the production of the product itself. So what you should be offering are things that you're already doing. So like higher level incentives tend to be visits to set. People who don't work in film think visiting the set is the coolest thing ever. We know it's a lot of sitting around and watching the same thing over and over again. But people that don't work in film would love to like have a lunch break with the cast and crew and get to hear you yell action and see what everyone does on set. That's always like a high level one. Getting to be an extra. I'm always begging my friends to come be extras, and then it's like really cool when I offer it as an incentive because people are excited about this thing that I would probably let them do for free anyway because I need them to. Yeah, like that one, naming a character, getting to come to the wrap party, getting to come to the premiere, obviously getting some sort of copy. I'm not so into DVDs because I think that it's like, why spend money on a DVD? I tend to do digital downloads or a private link. Those are kind of higher level things. And then at the lower level, you should be offering things that digitally market the campaign and build the world that it exists within. So, and don't cost you anything but time. So our favorite example is one here that's kind of hard to see, but it's a photo of me and Amelia Earhart. It's from this project called Time Signature. My friend Sean Mannion was making a film about a woman who's going to the concert of her favorite band and finds out that the drummer has traveled back in time to tell her something. So he was doing, at the $15 level, anyone who contributed that or more for the first week of the campaign got to be photoshopped into any time in history of their choosing. And it was great. It was really, really ingenious. And our CEO, Emily Best, likes to tell the story that her photo, because it was really funny, her $25 contribution turned into $200 because her friends were contributing just to get their own, not because they even cared about the project, just because it was such a fun, unique thing. And so this, people were watching the album of photos to see when the next one would come up, and it was a great way to create engagement with the campaign without even having to share the campaign itself. And it was personal. It just cost him time. He happened to be very fast and very good at Photoshop. We've seen people try to recreate this, and it isn't always great because they're not as fast with it or not as good with it, or it doesn't tie in as well with their film. But my example, for instance, I just loaned him my lighting kit, so I didn't even give him money, but he asked me where I wanted to go, and I told him to surprise me because we're friends. And I'm not like a huge Amelia Earhart fan, but he would know that I would want to meet a woman in history, so he surprised me with that, and I think it looks really cool. So of course I shared the crap out of it because it's like, why wouldn't I? And that's really what you want to do, is create something that people want to share, that feels personal to them and feels like you appreciate what they did and ties into the world of the film itself. My last campaign, it's a comedy. It's called About a Donkey. It's about a family that brings home a donkey. And what I was doing was downloading photos of donkeys online and adding little speech bubbles that said, thank you so-and-so for contributing, and then sharing that on social media. And generally, photos and videos of animals tend to do really well online, so it was a big hit. Other people have done, if you're shooting in a really beautiful location, people will do kind of unique stills or landscape shots. Some people have done like thank you songs or thank you dances, anything that feels like unique that you can just shoot on a video or turn into a photo. But really it's just about being as creative and using the skills that you have in your team. So you don't have to be great at Photoshop. You can use whatever you have at your disposal. But just keep in mind that it's all about being visual and shareable, because it's great to say thank you in text, but it probably won't catch people's eyes as much as possible. So you should absolutely say thank you, but should accompany it with a photo. Okay, and then the pitch video. I don't have Wi-Fi here, otherwise I would play you one. But if you go to our website, there's tons to watch, examples. But the biggest mistake filmmakers make with their pitch video is not representing the project that they're making in the tone of the video, their pitch video. So that's mainly my job at Seed&Spark, is to watch pitch videos and give feedback. And so many pitch videos are like someone sitting in front of their laptop with like okay audio saying, you know, I just really want to make this movie and it's going to look really great and it's going to be scary, or it's going to be really funny, or, you know, and just like, please, you know, give me money. And it's just not, it's not compelling. And ultimately, you would hope that people understand that you need money, so you have no budget to make a high quality pitch video. But they don't make that connection. They assume that the product that you are offering them in this video is what the final product is going to be like. So what we recommend is really just, A, set the tone. If you're making a horror film, scare them. If you're making a comedy, you better make them laugh. That's the easiest thing to do, is to set the tone. And you have about 15 seconds to grab people. So we always recommend that you use, if you've already shot it, if you're in post-production, then you have the advantage of using footage that you already shot. But you can also do test footage. You can use footage that you've gotten from other projects of your own that are similar in tone and kind of showcase your aesthetic as a filmmaker. But the objective is to hook your audience, and the best way to hook your audience is to use the actual genre and tone of what you're making. And then you have about 90 seconds to answer who, what, and why. And you know, you can get good picture quality with your phone these days. Just make sure you pick a nice, quiet environment. And if you have a mic, great. If not, just, you know, pick a good environment that will be quiet. But ultimately, show that you can frame a shot and like hook people with your aesthetic as a filmmaker. And you want to show as much as possible, not tell. But who you are as a filmmaker, show some of your past work or who you're collaborating with. Make it feel like a team effort. If they can be in the video, great. If not, that's fine. But you want it to seem like these people who are contributing are joining a team. It's not just you and your dream and your vision. It's a team that they're going to be part of. And then very concisely what this is, because people want to know. Story is everything. That's what makes people, that is what hooks people. What makes them want to be part of something is the story. And then why. More important now than ever, why does your story matter? Why should I care? Why your vision for it? What are you offering me that I'm not getting elsewhere as your audience member? That's what your pitch video is really all about. It's that key why. And the more concise you can be, the better. But it's really about hooking people with not only a taste of the product, but also your passion for it and why I should want to invest in you making it. And I mean like invest in the non-literal sense, but more emotionally. And show off your skills as a filmmaker. Use music and use, edit it nicely. And really, if I could, I would show you some. But if you want to email me, I can send you some good examples. But it's really just, you don't have to spend a lot of money. Just be creative. We're filmmakers, And it's really strange that everything we learn in film school about, showing and not telling just goes out the window with these pitch videos for some reason. And as I said, you have 90 seconds. We've seen that people make up their mind whether or not they're going to contribute by the 90-second mark. So you can make a 4-minute pitch video. Some people may keep watching. If you've hooked them enough, hopefully they would. But ideally, your video wouldn't exceed 2 minutes. And you would really kind of just you could always do like video updates, kind of going into more of the details that you would typically put in a pitch video. But it's all about really hooking them and getting to say, okay, they watched it, and they immediately want to go and click that contribute button or pledge button. Okay, so all this takes a ton of organization, and really, as I said, it's all about direct outreach. So you want to make sure that you have email lists and you have, so I obsessively subcategorize everything. Whenever I meet someone, I try to, write down where I met them on their business card or however I collected their email address, whether it was a screening of my own work or, at a specific festival or a networking event. And I try to write down something that we talked about, like that somehow relates to what I do, so that when I reach out to them, or rather when I'm starting to organize for my crowdfunding campaign, I'll say, okay, here's my general list of emails, here's how they're currently categorized, now let me create another list that's specific to the genre and the tone and the themes of my current project. Now how can I take these people and create subgenres, okay, how does this person relate to this project? So that when I reach out to them, I have some sort of personalized touch to the email that isn't just like a mass email, but it's like, hey, so-and-so, haven't seen you since, or it was lovely talking to you about, or I hope your project, whatever, is going well. And then I'll say, we talked about this, here's my latest project, here's the general pitch, here's why I think you, knowing what I know about you, would care about this project. And that's how you get them to click through and decide to contribute. Don't just send mass emails. I've had people say, I had someone in class once say, I sent 800 emails and I didn't see a 20 to 30% conversion rate. And I was like, did you send 800? Or they said, I sent emails to 800 people. And I said, did you send one email to 800 people or did you send 800 individual emails? And they said one mass email. And that's the difference, is that you can't just send one mass email. You don't have to personally type every single email, but you should be copying and pasting something, but you should be sending one to each individual person and making some sort of personalized touch in the beginning of every single one. So it's a lot of work. Hopefully you're not doing it alone. I'm going to talk about that again in a minute. But it's a ton of work, and so you really want to spend the time organizing, because once the clock is ticking, there's no time to really fix what you didn't do or make the adjustments that you didn't do ahead of time. And then during the campaign, updates are crucial, because for 30 days or 45 days or 60 days, I don't recommend 60-day campaigns. It's really hard to maintain momentum for 60 days, but it is an option, 60 days. But even for 30 days, it's very, very hard to just keep saying the same thing over and over again and, not get tired of it yourself. And obviously other people are going to get so tired of it. So what you want to do is have things that are enticing and exciting and make people want to jump on board if they haven't already. And so updates are, two things. One, proving to people that already contributed that they did pay for an experience, or you're giving them that experience. So, behind the scenes photos, or, if you did a casting session, something to show that happened, or a location scout, anything that is visual and shareable and enticing and part of the world of the film, so that you show these people, yeah, this is the experience you paid for, but also will hopefully pull people inward. So I do meet the cast videos for every project that I run a campaign for, and that's a great way to share something that indirectly leads back to the campaign but isn't the campaign itself, because it's like showing the work that's being done and will hook people and is something new for them to pay attention to. Ultimately, you want to be driving as much traffic to the campaign as possible, and hopefully it's not just by sharing the same link over and over again. And being visual and shareable is as important as those thank you incentives, and also being funny. Cuddly animals go a long way, even if you're not making something involving animals. Really tailor everything to your audience as much as possible, though. And then social media, the same way you want to be enticing people with updates, you want to be kind of giving little pieces of that out on social media to pull them in to read those updates. So, here's the first 15 seconds of our latest video update. See the rest at our campaign page in the latest update. These are the kinds of things you want to be doing. And really, again, just thanking people. You can't thank people, too much. People want to be thanked, and they want you to brag on their behalf. They don't want to brag about the good deeds that they've done. They want you to, brag about them. So there's nothing wrong with thanking people on social media and talking about the great people who are involved. Make announcements that are exciting, anything that shows the progress of the thing that you're funding. And then other things people like to do, events. If there's an event going on in your area, there's always something going on in New York City, so get out and meet people and try and jump on bandwagons that already exist. So for instance, my second to last campaign was a short that featured all LGBT characters. So we were going to Pride anyway, but we decided to wear shirts that had the URL for our campaign, and we talked to a bunch of people, and I doubt anyone stopped celebrating at Pride to contribute to our campaign, and I wouldn't expect them to. But what was great is that we were using hashtag NYC Pride, which was trending at the time. So we had people kind of clicking through to our campaign because of that, and we showed our audience that we were like getting out and talking to people about the project, which was a great update regardless of who may have contributed because of it. So that's something that I did. I recently recommended to someone that they crowdfund during Comic-Con because they were doing a web series about superhero villains, like stories from the villain side, and I was like, definitely, do it during Comic-Con. So you can use that hashtag and you can go out and talk to people and kind of show that you're living in this world that you're creating. And then also you can throw your own event. A lot of people do kicking off events or closing out events. Matching contributions, if you know someone is going to contribute $500, $1,000, even $250, anything that seems bigger than your average contribution, which, by the way, the most common contribution is $25. The average of all contributions tends to be $100. But if you know that someone's going to give you big money, don't just let them give it to you. Ask them to do it during the second or third week when we've lost momentum. And you can say, for this week only, your contribution is doubled. You get double the incentive thanks to this matching contributor up to X amount of money. And that's a great way to light a fire under people who have been holding out for the kind of end momentum. Because you will raise like 15% of your goal. If you run a successful campaign and people feel like you're going to make it, you'll raise 15% in like the last 24 hours. But it can be torture building up to that the last like 2 weeks. So you definitely want to try and find reasons to get people to contribute. We had this one campaign actually run a contest when the second Hunger Games was coming out called the Funder Games, where he knew that he had 3 big audiences from 3 cities. And so in order to keep momentum going in the second week, he ran a contest to see which city could bring in the most contributions, and that city got the premiere of the film. So that was huge because people are very prideful about where they're from and they like to compete, but it was like healthy competition, and it worked really well for him. And he was maybe the only campaign I've seen that has been sort of very steady, as opposed to just like going up and then nothing and then up at the end. It was like every day he was getting a nice amount of contributions. Okay, so if all of this seems like a ton of work that no one could do by themselves, you are correct. We have lives, we have jobs, we have families, we have things that we need to do. Some of us freelance. And so crowdfunding is a 24/7 job for the length of the campaign, and it's really just not something that can be done alone. And so I have heard people say, I can't get my producers or team members to do the outreach. They expect me to do it as like the face of the campaign or the writer, director, whatever it may be. And I say, the reality of independent film now is that anyone who has an above the line credit is responsible for building the audience for the project, because having an audience for the film benefits everyone, and the best way to build an audience is to do the outreach. And so if you have producers on your team, they should be putting their email list, on the table as well and doing the outreach. So that's one thing. Anyone you collaborate with who is getting, a credit in the film should be part of running, if not running the campaign, at least doing more than just sharing it a couple of times on social media. And then also you want to have people who are, and if you're just starting out, if it's your first campaign, it doesn't need to be a producer. It can be your best friend. It can be your schoolmate. It can be anyone who's willing to be part of this with you, because ultimately it's a collaboration of any kind. And so as the way that film is collaborative, crowdfunding should be as well. And it's really just about finding people who want to be part of it, but in a bigger way than the people who are contributing to be part of it. And then also you want to make sure that when you do attach people, that they have different schedules than you. So if you work a 9 to 5, whoever, is maybe your main collaborating producer, or if you have multiple people, you want to make sure that they can be manning the campaign when you can't, and that they have different skills than you do. So like I don't do my own graphics. I don't do a lot of the kind of like visual things associated with marketing my campaign. I'm more of the face of it. I do the outreach. I'm in the pitch video. I'm, the writer director, but I have someone else who's creating like the visual effects for my pitch video and stuff like that. And so you want to be thinking in that realm, like what skills don't I have that someone can fill in? And if you don't personally have the skill of being an obsessive planner who puts together spreadsheets, make sure you have someone on your team who is, because that's super important. And we actually have a sample schedule you can download on our site. And we really, really recommend that you schedule, not just because it's about being organized, but because you can check things. So if you find that on the second Tuesday you had a ton of traffic, but on the third Tuesday you have none, you can say, okay, what am I doing differently? What was I doing here that I'm not doing here? Okay, great. So like I was sharing on Facebook all day last Tuesday, but all day this Tuesday I'm sharing on Twitter. Well, that's not working. So let me cut Twitter and add Facebook for the rest of my schedule, because clearly that's where my audience is. But you wouldn't know that unless you're tracking your behavior and seeing what's working. And similarly on our site, I can pull it up after we have our dashboard that tells you where most of your traffic is coming from. So you can say, like, through my campaign, in my very first campaign, or even pretty much my first 3 campaigns, all my traffic was coming from Twitter. Not all of it, but a lot of traffic was coming through from Twitter. But I think, most recently in this last campaign, it was February, a lot of political stuff going on right now. I wasn't getting a lot of traction on Twitter. Very surprising. And so it was like all over my schedule. I cut it from my schedule and focused a lot on Facebook, because I found that was really beneficial for me and my audience, because it was like a very family-oriented film, and so people were kind of like branching out to their families. That's where it was sort of resonating. That was me and my campaign, and that's what I learned. It may not apply to you. But the point is, you want to have a plan. Just like on film, you want to kind of go into set being prepared, but you also want to be flexible because things go wrong always. And so you want to be able to, make changes based on what you're learning. So quick checklist. At this point, you should have an educated campaign goal, incentives that excite your audience, a compelling and concise pitch video, an organized and adaptable plan for every day of your campaign, and a team to help you execute that plan. And then execution is everything. So this is like a look at just the basic dashboard, but there's more I'll show you in a bit. But during the campaign, other than doing the email marketing and other than kind of actually sharing the campaign and trying to get contributions, you also want to be learning from people. So these are the people that have contributed, and these are the people that want to watch your film. So you should definitely be asking them how they want to watch the film, because you can learn about your distribution plan from that point. And then you also want to see why they contributed, because maybe whatever worked on them will work on someone else. So you want to maybe be able to replicate things that are working and get rid of things that aren't. And then unfortunately, as I said before, you will find that about 70% of your combined network will not contribute. It can be very disappointing. I know that I had experienced that and definitely wanted to just write people off. It can be very tempting to do that. But yeah, you shouldn't. You should ask them why, because you may find a few things. So some people may say that they just didn't even know about it, because when you're crowdfunding, you're like in this bubble where nothing matters but your campaign, and that's not where everyone else is living. So you want to actually check in. Some people have forgotten. Some people are like, oh, I've been meaning to, but I just haven't, and then they miss the window. Some people have a lot of shit going on that they just don't want to talk to you about, so that's why they haven't responded to your outreach, because people die, or people go through divorces, or things are just going on in their lives. And then maybe they don't have the money, maybe they're embarrassed to say that, and so you definitely want to follow up, and you want to make that okay. It's okay if you don't have the money. Give them something else to do. Can you follow the campaign? Can you share the campaign? Can you get someone else to contribute on your behalf? You want to give them action items that aren't just them dishing out money if they can't afford to. And then also, if they can't afford to but would like to, how do they want to watch the film? Because maybe they would rent the film in 2 or 3 years. And then most importantly from these people, you should ask them why they didn't contribute. And if they say that it's because they weren't interested in the project, that's really useful information to have. It may be hurtful to hear, but you should hear that. You should say, okay, that person, though my friend, is not my audience, and I should figure out why that is. What it is about them that it doesn't appeal to them. Okay, let me, be better about spending my time and resources for marketing the film itself, because it's all about learning in order to market the actual end product. Yeah. And then during the campaign, you want to continue doing everything you've been doing. So continue messaging people and seeing what works, because, as I said, you're going to be marketing the festival run in a couple of years, and then the VOD release a year after that, or whatever it may be. And you want to research new elements, new partnerships, find new things that could maybe benefit the next campaign if you're doing it in stages, or the next campaign for the next project, which could be years away, but still you want to be planning for that. and then you want to always say thank you. Support others, and not just during the campaign, but after, and be engaged. The worst thing is to run a campaign, be super active, and then disappear for 2 years, and then come back and be like, okay, the film's ready, now spread the word. No one's going to care. You want to be active during that time, so stay active. And the best way to do that is to collect materials. So you should be collecting, behind the scenes stuff and videos with your cast and crew and all of that good stuff from set, because you're going to have a press kit, but you also want to have things to share with your people, with the people who have contributed, because again, you're selling them on the experience of making it, so you better give them the experience of making it. My first feature was shot in Massachusetts in January in like -degree weather. It was insane. I'll never do it again. But it was quite an experience, and what I was selling people on was knowing what that was like. So of course I interviewed, my cast and crew and asked them what it was like to shoot in snow and, -10. And that was stuff I sent out to my audience, and I was able to use those materials to not only keep my audience engaged long enough to sort of get them to promote the VOD release years later, but also get new people who had never heard of the campaign but were now discovering the film to then follow along on social media and pay attention, and then eventually rent the film when it was available. And so those are the things that you want to be collecting. And then quickly, a story I like to tell is, so my campaign for my feature film on Kickstarter, there was a guy, a total stranger, who gave $100. I looked him up and saw that he was just a contributor to a lot of campaigns. So I reached out to him again when I was crowdfunding for new projects on Seed&Spark 2 years later. And I had thanked him, at the time when he contributed to my Kickstarter, but he wasn't anyone I knew, so I didn't really stay in touch with him. But he was receiving my updates, and I had been sending updates like, one every 2 weeks, or at least once a month, with like where we were in post-production, or like the latest review that we got, or more behind the scenes stuff. And so I reached out to him and told him about my new projects and thanked him again for being part of making Summit my feature. And he replied and said, "Christina, it's so lovely to hear from you. I have to say, I've contributed to so many campaigns where the filmmakers never finish the product, or I never hear from them again, or they only get in touch when they want us to then share the film." And so he was like, "I just have really enjoyed reading your updates and just love that you have really made me feel part of it, and I've enjoyed watching your journey as a filmmaker." So he asked what made Seed&Spark different from Kickstarter, and I told him about the wish list thing and 80%. And then he said, "What on your wish list is most important to you?" And I said, paying my cast and crew, because I wasn't able to pay everyone last time around. And I was like, why I was running this campaign was to pay everyone. And within 5 minutes of saying that, he had fulfilled the remaining balance, which was $1,000. So he went from $100 total stranger supporter to $1,000 supporter, because I had sent a bunch of updates. Like, I just blogged about my film for a bunch of people for 2 years, something I would have done anyway, but it ended up turning into $1,000. So, not everyone is going to engage with these materials in that way, but you never know who that one person is. I didn't have any crazy strangers give to my last campaign in February. There were some people who gave $250 or something like that, so people from social media or from who were supporters who I had kind of strategically reached out to, but actually that's not true. I had someone give $1,000. But in my campaign before that in 2014, I had a total stranger give $5,000 to my campaign because it was my birthday, and we were $1,000 away from our goal, and we were offering the executive producer credit at $5,000, and it was sort of like a combination of those three things that in the last hour he just gave us $5,000. And there's no way you can recreate that, and I obviously wasn't able to recreate that with my last campaign. But that's sort of what I love about crowdfunding, is that it is it's full of these ups and downs, and it can be very stressful and very intense and very disappointing, but so incredibly rewarding. And you do actually reach people who want to see your work that you wouldn't reach otherwise. Okay, and then after the campaign, you want to continue growing your audience. And so, as I said, at the beginning, festivals are not what they used to be. They're not really for distribution anymore or for having access to the industry. What they are for is a means to meeting people who pay to watch independent film and who are the types of people who recommend films to their friends. And so those are the people that you want to be getting out and talking to and collecting email addresses from, and really just creating connections with who will then become amplifiers of your work as a whole, not just this project. So, Q&As are so important in when you have your film screening. For instance, my feature, I worked on that thing for like 3 years, and so by the time I was screening it for an audience, I was so over it. I was like, the last thing I wanted to do was talk about it, but I would have to get up in front of people, and I wanted to just be like, yeah, I mean, it's fine, it's okay. Like, I made it 4 years ago. But I knew that these people had just spent money to watch it and had maybe enjoyed it, and this was their first exposure to it and me, and so I needed to get up there and muster up the same passion I once had for it and show these people the respect that they deserved for spending money on my work. And so be that filmmaker that engages people enough to get them to want to follow you to the next project, because that's what this is. It's not just about, you know, this project. And so I think that's a big mistake filmmakers make in Q&As, is like being really self-detrimental, and whether sincere or not, they kind of lose people. And it's like, you want to, I always love it when I think a movie's okay, but then I kind of really want to champion it after hearing from the filmmaker because they were so cool and worth supporting. So you want to be that filmmaker, not the person, not the opposite, where it's like you watch a film and you thought it was pretty good, but then you like it less after you hear from the filmmaker. So that's what festivals are for. If you are doing a Q&A, as I said, like hand out a piece of paper. It may seem weird, but collect email addresses because it's so important for the next project. I was able to collect emails and send it out to the people who had paid for it at festivals when it was released on VOD, and I was able to get a lot of those people to then share it on social media and tell their friends about it, and then also some even turn into contributors for my next campaign. So that's really where it's at. And also, if you're not on social media, get on social media and look for things like ways to meet other filmmakers online. There's obviously a script chat every Sunday, but we personally do a hashtag Film Curious every other Tuesday at 2 p.m. And it's where we talk about film-related topics that filmmakers choose every 2 weeks. And there are usually a couple hundred filmmakers that participate, and it's been a great way to meet filmmakers who are part of the Seed&Spark community. So if you're planning to run a campaign, I've gotten a lot of contributions just by being part of those chats. And someone always wins $100 towards a campaign in the chat, whoever's like the most engaged person. So if you're running a campaign, you definitely want to know those people because you want them to choose to give to your campaign when they win. And then after, if you were to choose to distribute through us, just very quickly how it works. $10 a month, people subscribe, and they get full access to our cinema, which has a couple hundred films and series. And $5 of their contribution gets put towards minutes watched. So you are making money if your film is on our platform based on how many minutes are watched from subscribers. And the other $5 every month gets put into what we call our seed fund. And every month, subscribers get sent a poll to choose which current campaign they'd like to put their seed money towards. So currently we have a $2,500 seed fund. We're hoping to build that, but we're trying to create sustainability on both ends. So if you run a successful campaign on our site and you reach 500 followers, you become eligible for this seed money, which is essentially just money on top of whatever you raised. So it's really great. If you are interested in using our platform, you don't have to become a subscriber, but it is an option for you to build that seed fund for other filmmakers and yourself. And I think there's some cool stuff to watch in our cinema. And then you get to track stuff. The same way you get to track like who's watching your pitch video and where your traffic is coming from, you can do that on the distribution side as well and see like how many minutes of your film people are watching, or where the traffic is coming from, or if they're clicking through press, or if they're sharing it on social media. Any questions? If not, you are welcome to, you can email crowdfunding@seedandspark.com. You could also Christina@seedandspark.com. If anyone didn't give me their email and would like this deck, this is here. So if you find that your audience is largely on Facebook, and that's how they interact on social media, then maybe messaging them would be more, would have a bigger impact than emailing them, but it's still like a personalized direct outreach. I also did a lot of Facebook messaging because that's how I communicate with a lot of people, and that was how I got a lot of contributions through direct outreach. So just to show you, like this is my dashboard for my last campaign, and this was my last campaign, so you can see how we broke down our wish list. And people were able to contribute or loan to specific items. You can watch it if you go on the website and about a donkey. Or look at other pitch videos. If you're going to do that, there's a campaign that I like to show that really just the first 15 seconds. I think the pitch video overall is a bit too long, but this filmmaker managed to, he just like drove into a tunnel and bloodied up he put like fake blood on his wardrobe and used his skills as a filmmaker to create tension without spending a dime. And I think that's a great example of how you can set the tone of your film in your pitch video without spending any money and really hooking your audience. And so the prayer is a great one to check out. But I just wanted to show you so you can see where I was getting a lot of traffic, and then you can kind of see how I was doing with my goal along the way, and I can see how many page views I got, and I can track. I don't have anything distributed on our distribution side, otherwise I would be able to show you that, but that's that campaign. And then my last campaign I can go to and see that information as well. The dashboard didn't exist as well. Oh, it does actually. It didn't exist in this state at the time of that campaign, so I wasn't sure if it would have all this information, but it does. So yeah, it's pretty cool, and it's a great way to sort of track your audience. We also have people, when they contribute, they fill out a survey that says like where they watch content and what apps they're using, and so you kind of collect all this information to put together a distribution plan if you don't already have one.
But here, I have a question for you.
Yep.
I ran my campaign on Kickstarter.
Okay.
If I decided to switch to another platform, how do I get all those people?
So on Kickstarter, you can download the emails of contributors.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And that's how I did it. I just personally emailed them. And, you know, I didn't find anyone unwilling to sign up for a new platform. Ultimately, they were following me and my film.
What do they care about?
Yeah, what do they care? So, and we have, like, the exact same, like, payout information and partnerships as Kickstarter, so there's really no difference. We also take a smaller fee. We give people, so across all platforms, it's generally 5% now, but we give people the option to cover the platform fee before they check out, and we see that 80% of people do click that, so you don't end up losing really $5. They add on, yeah, because often it's like cents, you know, and so it's like, why not? And yeah, so 80% of them do, so you don't actually end up losing so much of your goal. And yeah, I don't know some If anyone has any other questions, feel free to ask me now or talk to me one-on-one or shoot me an email. And if you want to explore our site, you can. But here are films that you can watch and current campaigns.